Have you ever stood in an open field, feeling the immense and solid weight of the world beneath your feet, and wondered what truly lies in the silent, unplumbed darkness below? Not just the familiar layers of soil and rock described in textbooks, but something more profound, something that whispers from the deepest recesses of our collective memory. What if the ground beneath you is not a foundation, but a ceiling? What if the continents we traverse, separated by vast and churning oceans, are not isolated land masses at all, but merely the visible peaks of a single, interconnected world, linked by a sprawling and impossibly ancient network of passages? Tonight, we journey into one of the most staggering and persistent mysteries in human history. An idea so vast it challenges our entire conception of geography, history, and our own origins. We will trace the threads of a narrative that runs like a hidden river through the myths of every ancient culture, through the journals of forgotten explorers, and through the anomalous data points of modern science. This is the story of a global subterranean system, a web of tunnels carved with unimaginable technology by a civilization that predates our own recorded past. Imagine corridors stretching for thousands of miles in the crushing dark, linking the sacred sites of the Andes to the foundations of the Giza plateau, connecting the hidden monasteries of the Himalayas with forgotten caverns beneath the Antarctic ice. What if these were not mere myths, but the degraded memories of a functional world, a secret highway used by the architects of our most enigmatic ancient wonders? What purpose would such a network serve? Was it an ark, a planetary-scale refuge designed to shelter life from a cataclysm that scoured the surface world? Was it a conduit for trade and knowledge, allowing a precursor civilization to operate on a global scale, invisible to the primitive cultures that would one day inherit the surface? Or is it something more, a system still active, still maintained by guardians in the dark, a silent world that watches our own chaotic story unfold? We will follow the whispers, examine the clues buried in stone and story, and dare to ask the question few have voiced aloud. What if the greatest empire in Earth's history is the one we have never seen? A civilization whose roads are not laid upon the land, but threaded through the very heart of the planet itself. Settle in, suspend your disbelief, and prepare to reconsider the very ground you stand on. The world may be far older, far more connected, and infinitely more mysterious than you have ever been led to believe. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. The first whispers of this subterranean world emerge not from geological surveys, but from the oldest records of human consciousness, our myths. Before history was written, it was told, and in these tales from every corner of the ancient world, the idea of a complex, inhabited realm beneath our own is a universal constant. These are not simple stories of graves and final resting places. They are detailed geographies of a lower world, a place of journeys, kingdoms, and powerful beings. Consider the Greek concept of the underworld. Beyond the simplistic image of Hades as a gloomy land of the dead, the deeper myths describe a vast and structured domain with its own rivers, fields, and palaces. It was a place one could journey to, as heroes like Orpheus and Heracles did, by finding specific, guarded entrances hidden in the remote corners of the world. These were not metaphorical passages, but physical caves and fissures believed to be literal doorways. Similarly, the Maya of Mesoamerica spoke of Xibalba, the place of fear, an underworld reached through a treacherous descent. The Popol Vuh, their sacred text, describes it not as a hell, but as a kingdom ruled by powerful lords, complete with ball courts and grand houses. It was a physical place that played an active role in the affairs of the surface, a realm that heroes had to navigate and outwit. What if these detailed accounts are not just allegories for spiritual trials, but the distorted memories of a real physical cartography, a map of a subterranean world that was once accessible? Look to the east, and the pattern deepens. In Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, the realm of Patala is an elaborate, multi-leveled kingdom beneath the earth, filled with beautiful cities, glittering jewels, and advanced serpentine beings known as the Nagas. These beings were not seen as demonic, but as wise and powerful guardians of ancient treasures and esoteric knowledge, capable of traveling between their world and ours. The texts describe their capital, Bhogavati, with such vivid detail that it reads less like a myth and more like a traveler's account of a foreign city. Again, we are confronted with the image of a thriving, intelligent civilization existing parallel to our own, hidden only by a veil of rock and soil. These stories, from Greece to India to Central America, share a core structure that is too consistent to be mere coincidence. They all describe a lower world that is vast, geographically complex, inhabited by intelligent beings, accessible through specific physical entrances, and governed by its own powerful rulers. Could it be that our ancient ancestors were all independently inventing the same elaborate fiction? Or is it more plausible that they were all describing the same thing, a genuine, albeit rarely seen, aspect of their world? Perhaps these myths are a form of cultural fossil, the preserved imprint of a forgotten reality, a time when the boundary between the surface and the underworld was more porous, when contact was more common, and when the existence of a global network of subterranean passages was not a wild speculation, but accepted knowledge. Perhaps the true mystery is not whether these tunnels exist, but what happened to sever our connection to them so completely that their reality receded from history into the twilight realm of myth. Nowhere does the whisper of a subterranean network echo more loudly than in the Andes Mountains of South America. Here, the line between myth and history is fluid, and the stories of tunnels weaving through the continent are not confined to ancient texts, but are a living part of the local oral tradition. The Incas and their pre-Incan predecessors spoke of the Chincanas, a Quechua word that translates loosely to places where one gets lost. These are not merely caves, but vast labyrinthine tunnel systems, some of which are said to be so extensive that they connect the great cities of the Andean Empire, and perhaps stretch even further. According to legend, these tunnels were not crude passages, but were flawlessly constructed, with polished walls and ceilings high enough to walk through comfortably for miles. The most famous of these legendary tunnels is one said to connect the Incan capital of Cusco with the Tiwanaku civilization near Lake Titicaca, hundreds of miles away, and even extending into the Amazon jungle. The most sacred site in Cusco, the Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, is believed to be a major nexus point, with a hidden entrance leading down into this continental web. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, looting the city of its immense golden treasures, it is said that a significant portion of the Incan gold, along with priceless cultural artifacts and the bodies of their deified kings, were spirited away into these tunnels, vanishing from history forever. The legendary treasure of the Incas, therefore, may not be lost in a single hidden chamber, but dispersed throughout a vast underground world, protected by the labyrinth itself. One of the most compelling accounts comes from the 19th and early 20th centuries, from explorers and adventurers who sought these tunnels. Many reported finding sealed entrances, stone doorways that seemed to have no mechanism to be opened, often decorated with strange symbols. Local guides would refuse to approach these sites, speaking of powerful guardians and the certainty of becoming lost forever. There are tales of those who did enter and never returned, their voices echoing for days from beneath the earth before fading into silence. Could these be simple folk tales designed to ward off treasure hunters? Or are they cautionary memories of a very real danger? The mystery deepened in the mid-20th century with stories of a supposed discovery near the Ecuador-Peru border. An explorer named Juan Morich claimed to have found an enormous underground system he called the Cueva de los Tallos, or the Cave of the Oilbirds. He described not a natural cave, but a vast, artificially created library containing metal books inscribed with an unknown hieroglyphic language detailing the history of a lost civilization. He spoke of chambers filled with golden statues and intricate carvings of figures and animals from across the world. His claims were so compelling that in 1976, they prompted a major expedition involving both Ecuadorian and British military personnel, as well as the astronaut Neil Armstrong. While the expedition did explore and map parts of the cave system, they found no golden library. Morich claimed they had been led to a preliminary chamber and that the true entrance to the library was elsewhere, its location a secret he would not reveal without certain conditions being met. The mystery of the metal library remains unsolved, but it adds another layer to the Andean puzzle. The idea that these tunnels are not just passages, but archives, repositories of knowledge from a world that has vanished from the surface. What if the Andean civilizations were not the original builders of this network, but its inheritors? What if they were the last in a long line of cultures who knew of the tunnels and used them, but whose knowledge was incomplete, a fading echo of the science possessed by the original architects? This would explain why so many entrances are now sealed, their purpose and function lost to time. The tunnels of the Andes, therefore, might be the most visible remnant of a once global system, their legend preserved more vibrantly here because the rugged, seismically active terrain and the resilient indigenous culture have kept the stories alive. Just beneath the surface of the modern world, from the soaring peaks of the Andes, our investigation descends into the soft volcanic tuff of Anatolia in modern-day Turkey, where the evidence for vast subterranean habitation is not a matter of legend, but of archaeological fact. Here, we find Derinkuyu and Kaymakli, the most famous of nearly 200 underground cities that have been discovered in the Cappadocia region. These are not small networks of caves. They are sprawling, multi-leveled metropolises carved deep into the earth, capable of housing tens of thousands of people along with their livestock and food supplies. Derinkuyu, the deepest discovered to date, plunges more than 280 feet below the surface, comprising at least 18 distinct levels. It is a masterpiece of ancient engineering, complete with ventilation shafts providing fresh air to its lowest depths, wineries, oil presses, stables, chapels, and classrooms. Massive, circular stone doors, weighing several tons, each, could be rolled into place from the inside, sealing off corridors and protecting the inhabitants from any threat on the surface. These cities are not crude shelters. They are thoughtfully designed, self-sufficient environments, but their existence raises a series of profound and unsettling questions. Who built them, and why? Mainstream archaeology suggests they were expanded over centuries by various peoples, most notably the Phrygians and early Christians, as temporary refugees from invasion or persecution. While this is undoubtedly true in part, they were certainly used for this purpose. This explanation feels incomplete. The sheer scale and complexity of the initial construction suggest a level of planning and a long-term vision that goes beyond a mere emergency bunker. Carving a city for 20,000 people out of solid rock is not a short-term project. It implies a culture for whom living underground was not an occasional necessity, but a central aspect of their civilization. What threat could have been so persistent and so terrible as to drive an entire society to invest such colossal effort into building a world beneath the world? Perhaps the threat was not from other humans. Perhaps it was from something environmental, a memory of a cataclysm that made the surface world periodically uninhabitable. But the most tantalizing mystery of the Cappadocian cities lies in their interconnectedness. It is believed that many of these underground cities are linked by a network of tunnels, some stretching for several miles. The 8-kilometer tunnel connecting Kaimakli to Derinkuyu has been partially excavated. But what if this is just one small segment of a much larger web? Local legends, much like those in the Andes, speak of tunnels that go on for hundreds of miles, connecting Cappadocia to other regions of Anatolia. Could these underground cities be not isolated settlements, but major hubs or metropolitan centers on a far more extensive subterranean highway? This possibility transforms our understanding of their purpose. They would not just be hiding places, but integral parts of a hidden civilization with its own geography, its own trade routes, and its own society, all operating in parallel to the endless march of empires and armies on the surface above. The construction itself is a marvel. The volcanic tuff is relatively soft, but the precision of the carving, the stability of the structures over millennia, and the genius of the ventilation systems point to a deep and sophisticated understanding of geology and engineering. The builders knew exactly how to create vast open halls without risking collapse, how to channel water, and how to ensure a breathable atmosphere deep underground. Where did this knowledge come from? Was it developed independently by the peoples of Cappadocia, or was it inherited knowledge, a blueprint passed down from an even earlier, more advanced civilization? The original architects of the network? The questions multiply. Why so many cities in one region? Was this area a particularly safe or strategic location in the subterranean world? And what of the nearly 200 other sites that have been identified but not yet excavated? What secrets do they hold? The underground cities of Cappadocia provide our investigation with a crucial anchor. They prove, beyond any doubt, that ancient peoples possessed the will and the capability to create vast, permanent, and sophisticated habitats deep within the earth. They shift the central question from, could it be done, to, how far did they go? If a civilization could build a network of cities beneath one region, could they, or someone before them, have done it on a continental or even a global scale? Derinkuyu is a fact carved in stone, a silent, sprawling testament to the reality of the underworld. It invites us to consider that what we have found so far may only be the suburbs of a hidden empire. The existence of colossal subterranean structures like Derinkuyu and the legendary tunnels of the Andes forces us to confront a fundamental and deeply uncomfortable question. How? How did ancient civilizations, presumably with little more than simple hand tools and brute force, achieve such breathtaking feats of engineering? The conventional answers, mass labor, generations of effort, and simple tools used with incredible ingenuity, begin to fray at the edges when confronted with the sheer scale and precision of these works. This is where our investigation must step into more speculative territory, to consider the possibility of lost technologies, forms of science and engineering that our own civilization has not yet rediscovered. Consider the stone itself. In many of the most enigmatic ancient sites, from the tunnels beneath Sacsayhuaman in Peru to the megalithic foundations at Baalbek in Lebanon, we find stonework of a quality that seems to defy simple tools. We see massive blocks weighing hundreds or even thousands of tons, fitted together with no mortar and such precision that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. We see complex, polygonal shapes that would be a challenge to create even with modern computer-aided machinery. But perhaps most strangely, in some of the deepest and most mysterious tunnels, explorers have reported walls that are not just cut, but are smooth to the touch, with a glassy, almost polished finish. This has led to the theory of vitrification. Vitrification is a process where rock is heated to such an extreme temperature that it melts and then cools into a glass-like substance. Could ancient builders have possessed a technology capable of melting stone, allowing them to shape tunnels and chambers not by chipping away at rock, but by molding it like clay? Such a technology would require a portable, controllable, high-energy source far beyond anything we associate with the ancient world. Another, even more radical theory revolves around the manipulation of sound and frequency. The concept, often called sonic masonry or acoustic levitation, proposes that ancient builders understood the principles of resonance and could use specific frequencies to alter the physical properties of matter. In this model, massive stone blocks could have been rendered weightless, or at least significantly lighter, allowing them to be moved and positioned with ease. Similarly, a focused sonic device could theoretically be used to disintegrate rock, carving tunnels with sound itself. This idea, while sounding like science fiction, finds echoes in legends from around the world. Incan lore speaks of priests who could move massive stones with the sound of trumpets. An Egyptian legend tells of a magical sound that could open secret doorways. Could these be garbled memories of a genuine sonic technology? The science of cymatics demonstrates how sound vibrations can create complex, geometric patterns in matter. Is it such a leap to imagine that an advanced application of this principle could be used for construction on a monumental scale? The implications of such a technology would be staggering. It would not only explain the construction of the tunnels, but also their reported characteristics. Smooth, almost melted walls could be a byproduct of intense sonic energy. Tunnels that stretch for miles with perfect alignment could have been created with a focused beam of resonant frequency. This technology would also be inherently clean, producing little debris compared to conventional excavation, which might explain the curious lack of spoil heaps around many of these alleged tunnel entrances. Where would such an advanced understanding of physics have originated? This is the heart of the mystery. It seems unlikely to have sprung fully formed from the civilizations we know of. This suggests two possibilities. Either our understanding of our own ancestors' capabilities is profoundly wrong, and they possessed a scientific knowledge far greater than we credit them with. Or they were the beneficiaries of an earlier, even more advanced civilization, a precursor race, the original architects of the global network, whose knowledge was inherited in a fragmented and incomplete form. This precursor civilization would be the source of the blueprints, the builders of the primary arterial tunnels, and the inventors of the technology required to do so. Later cultures, like the Incas or the peoples of Cappadocia, would have discovered, explored, and expanded upon this existing network, using their own more conventional methods to add to the ancient superstructure. This would explain the mix of architectural styles found in many underground sites. Impossibly precise ancient sections, adjoining cruder, more recent additions. It would be akin to finding a modern subway system with some stations built of polished, seamless granite and others of simple brick and mortar. The technology itself would have been lost, but the physical network it created would remain, a silent, enduring enigma waiting to be rediscovered. If a global network of tunnels was indeed constructed with such advanced technology and colossal effort, the question of how is immediately superseded by the even more profound question of why. What conceivable purpose could justify a project of such planetary scale? The answer, woven into the fabric of countless myths and oral traditions, is as dramatic as it is terrifying. Survival. This is the cataclysm theory, which posits that the subterranean network was not built for convenience, trade, or conquest, but as a global ark, an elaborate system of self-sufficient shelters designed by a highly advanced precursor civilization that knew a civilization-ending disaster was coming. This was not a response to a local flood or a regional war, but a coordinated, long-term strategy to preserve the seed of intelligent life through a catastrophe that would render the entire surface of the planet uninhabitable for generations. What kind of catastrophe would warrant such a response? The candidates are numerous, and many are found in our planet's own geological and astronomical history. A massive asteroid or comet impact, like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, would create a global firestorm followed by an impact winter, blocking out the sun for years and making surface life impossible. A series of supervolcanic eruptions could have a similar effect, choking the atmosphere with ash and plunging the world into a prolonged volcanic winter. Another possibility, more controversial but deeply embedded in esoteric lore, is a crustal displacement, or pole shift, a sudden and violent reorientation of the Earth's crust that would trigger worldwide earthquakes of unimaginable magnitude, mega tsunamis that would scour the continents, and extreme climate change. The memory of such an event, it is argued, is preserved in the nearly universal flood myths found in cultures across the globe, from the story of Noah to the Epic of Gilgamesh, to the legends of Manu in India. In this context, the tunnels were the real arks. While a few individuals might have survived on boats, the true continuation of civilization, its knowledge, its technology, its genetic diversity, would have been secured in deep, protected, and self-sustaining subterranean environments. This theory reframes the very nature of the network. The tunnels were not just highways, they were lifelines. The underground cities were not just shelters, they were biodomes, equipped with everything needed to sustain life for centuries. Vast hydroponic farms lit by an unknown technology, water purification systems drawing from deep aquifers, and stable geothermal energy sources. The massive stone doors at places like Derinkuyu were not just to keep out armies, but to seal the inhabitants against a toxic atmosphere, extreme temperatures, or global flooding on the surface. The network would also need to be a genetic repository, a library of life. Legends of underground worlds often describe not just humans, but also animals and the seeds of all useful plants being taken below ground. This is a direct parallel to the Noah's Ark story, but on a far more sophisticated and plausible scale. Preserving the planet's biodiversity through a global cataclysm would be a primary objective for any civilization advanced enough to foresee it. After the cataclysm subsided and the surface world began to heal, the survivors would emerge from the tunnels to a barren and empty planet. They would be the new progenitors of life, the mythical first people or culture bringers described in so many creation stories. They would possess the knowledge and the resources of the old world, which would seem like divine magic to any scattered, primitive survivors who may have clung to life on the surface. This would explain the sudden appearance of agriculture, architecture, astronomy, and complex social structures in the archaeological record, seemingly out of nowhere. It wasn't invented. It was reintroduced by the survivors of the precursor civilization emerging from their subterranean world. This theory is staggering in its implications. It suggests that our own civilization is not the first high civilization on this planet, but merely the latest in a long cycle of creation and destruction. It posits that human history is far older and more dramatic than we have ever imagined, punctuated by apocalypses that have repeatedly wiped the slate clean. And it hints that the evidence of this former world, its greatest achievements and its final warning, lie waiting for us in a silent, dark, and continent-spanning network of tunnels, the ultimate testament to a civilization that saw the end coming and engineered a way to live through it. From the broad theory of a global cataclysm, our path inevitably leads to the sands of Egypt and the Giza Plateau, a place that has long been a focal point for theories of a lost, advanced civilization. While the magnificent pyramids and the enigmatic Sphinx dominate the surface, it is the persistent legends of what lies beneath them that connect Giza to the mystery of the worldwide tunnel network. For centuries, mystics, explorers, and esoteric traditions have insisted that the Giza complex is merely the tip of a vast subterranean iceberg, a surface marker for a much larger and older world hidden below. These are not New Age fantasies. They are found in the writings of ancient historians like Herodotus, who spoke of seeing a vast underground labyrinth beneath the pyramid of Hawara, and in Arab legends that describe extensive galleries and chambers beneath the Great Pyramid, filled with the treasures and knowledge of the pre-Adamite kings. The central figure in these subterranean legends is the Sphinx, Its immense age, which many geologists argue is far greater than the dynasty credited with its carving due to water erosion patterns on its enclosure, suggests it belongs to a much earlier period of history. In this view, the Sphinx is not merely a monument, but a guardian, a sentinel watching over a primary entrance to the underworld network. The famous Dream Stela of Thutmose IV, situated between the paws of the Sphinx, tells the story of the pharaoh being promised the throne if he would clear the sand away from the great statue. But esoteric interpretations suggest the clearing of the sand was symbolic, a metaphor for uncovering a deeper, hidden truth. It is the legendary Hall of Records that forms the core of this mystery. The celebrated psychic Edgar Cayce prophesied in the 1930s that a chamber would be discovered near the Sphinx containing the complete records of the Atlantean civilization, detailing their history, their technology, and the story of their great cataclysm. Cayce claimed that this was one of 3 such repositories worldwide, a planetary archive designed to preserve knowledge for a future age. While his prophecies are not scientific evidence, they have inspired decades of research. In the late 20th century, seismic surveys and ground-penetrating radar scans conducted around the Sphinx did indeed reveal anomalies, cavities, and chambers in the bedrock where none were expected. Official explanations often describe these as natural fissures or minor, unfinished tombs. However, the alignment of some of these cavities, particularly a large rectangular chamber found under the front paws of the Sphinx, aligns perfectly with the location described in the legends of the Hall of Records. Access to investigate these anomalies has been notoriously difficult to obtain, fueling theories of an active cover-up by authorities who may know more than they are willing to admit. But what if the Hall of Records is not a single room, but an antechamber, a grand entrance hall to the subterranean network itself? What if Giza was a primary node, a capital city, or a major junction point in the global system? This would explain the incredible precision and astronomical alignment of the surface structures. They were not just tombs, but complex navigational and energetic devices, their function tied to the much larger complex below. The shafts within the Great Pyramid, which point to specific stars, might not have been for the pharaoh's soul to ascend, but functioned as transmitters or receivers, communicating with other nodes in the network, or even with off-world locations. The sheer amount of engineering and geological knowledge required to construct the Giza complex on the surface hints at a civilization with a profound understanding of the planet. It is a small leap to assume that their knowledge extended deep into the earth as well. They would have known the best places to build, the most stable geological formations, and the locations of deep aquifers and geothermal vents. Giza, therefore, may have been chosen for its unique terrestrial and energetic properties, making it the ideal location for a gateway between the surface and the deep interior. In this grand vision, the hidden chambers beneath the Giza sands are not just storing metal plates or papyrus scrolls. They are the entrance to a living world, a highway that could take a traveler from the heart of ancient Egypt to the mountains of Tibet or the jungles of the Amazon without ever seeing the sun. The Sphinx, in its ancient and silent wisdom, may be guarding not just the story of a lost civilization, but the very road that leads to it. Leaving the ancient sands of Egypt, our journey across the web of myth and possibility takes us to the Americas, a continent teeming with its own rich tapestry of subterranean lore. Here, the stories are not just of tunnels, but of emergence, of entire peoples whose origin stories begin not on the surface of the earth, but deep within it. The most profound and detailed of these accounts come from the Hopi people of the American Southwest. Their oral traditions, preserved with meticulous care for generations, describe a series of worlds or epochs of civilization. They state that the current era is the fourth world, and that humanity survived the destruction of the previous three worlds by taking refuge underground. According to their history, when the third world was consumed by a cataclysm, sometimes described as a great flood, other times as a fiery rain from the heavens, the virtuous Hopi were guided by benevolent beings known as the Anu Sinam, or the Ant People, into a vast underground sanctuary. In this subterranean world, they were sheltered, fed, and taught the skills they would need to survive until the surface was once again safe. The descriptions of this underground realm are remarkable. It was not a dark cave, but a world lit by an artificial light source with abundant food and water. The ant people themselves are described as slender beings with large eyes and small heads, possessing an advanced knowledge of agriculture and engineering. What is truly striking is the specificity of the legend, a detail that lends it a feeling of genuine memory rather than abstract myth. The Hopi even explain the narrow waist of ants today as a symbolic reminder of a time when the ant people had to tighten their belts and ration their food to share with their human guests. Could the ant people be a folk memory of a highly advanced, non-human or quasi-human subterranean race, the same race perhaps that engineered the global tunnel network? The parallel between the Hopi's Anu Sinam and the Sumerian Anunnaki is a linguistic coincidence too tantalizing for many researchers to ignore. Both are described as powerful, technologically advanced beings who played a direct role in the survival and development of early humanity. The Hopi emergence story is not unique. Similar tales are found in other Pueblo cultures and among the Navajo. The location of the Sipapu, the hole through which their ancestors emerged into this fourth world, is considered a real, physical, and profoundly sacred place, often identified with a site in the Grand Canyon. For centuries, rumors have persisted of vast, unexplored cave systems within the Grand Canyon. A controversial newspaper article from 1909 detailed the supposed discovery by a Smithsonian explorer of a massive underground citadel filled with artifacts of an unknown, possibly Egyptian or Tibetan origin. While the Smithsonian has always denied the story and no evidence of the expedition has ever been found, the tale has become a cornerstone of American subterranean lore, suggesting that the Grand Canyon may indeed hide an entrance to this deeper world. Further west, in the shadow of the majestic Mount Shasta in Northern California, the legends become more modern, but no less compelling. For over a century, Shasta has been the epicenter of stories about a hidden city called Talos, believed to be a remnant of the lost continent of Lemuria. According to the legend, the Lemurians foresaw the cataclysm that would sink their homeland and constructed a vast city beneath the mountain. They are said to live there to this day, a highly advanced spiritual community, occasionally interacting with surface dwellers, but largely remaining hidden. Reports from hikers and locals of strange lights on the mountain, of tall, robed figures who vanish into the forest, and of deep, resonant humming sounds emanating from within the earth are commonplace. These American legends, from the ancient emergence myths of the Hopi to the more recent tales of Telos, paint a consistent picture. They speak of the Americas as being a land with deep and active connections to a subterranean civilization. A civilization that acted as humanity's savior in a time of great crisis and may still be watching over us from their hidden cities, waiting for the day when another emergence, perhaps one of knowledge and shared wisdom, can finally take place. Our exploration now takes a vertical leap from the canyons of America to the highest places on Earth, the Himalayas. In this colossal mountain range, often called the roof of the world, the legends of a hidden inner world are not just stories. They are a core component of the region's spiritual and philosophical traditions. Here, the subterranean realm is known by many names, but the most famous are Agartha and Shambhala. While sometimes used interchangeably in Tibetan Buddhist lore, they are often described as distinct but related kingdoms. Agartha is portrayed as a vast, subterranean empire, a network of cities and tunnels that spans the globe, with its primary capital hidden deep beneath the Himalayas. It is a world of science, of advanced technology, and of a governance that has maintained peace for millennia. Shambhala, on the other hand, is often described as a more ethereal, spiritual kingdom, a place of enlightened beings that exist in a dimension parallel to our own, but which has a physical anchor point, a hidden valley somewhere in the remote, unexplored reaches of the Tibetan Plateau or the Gobi Desert. The two are said to be connected, with Shambhala acting as the spiritual heart of the Agartha network. The journey to these hidden realms is a central theme in Tibetan mysticism. It is described as both a physical and a spiritual pilgrimage. The physical path is said to be through secret tunnels, many of which have their entrances hidden within the deepest levels of ancient monasteries, like Patala Palace in Lhasa. These entrances are not open to all. They are sealed by powerful forces and guarded by initiated monks who can distinguish between a worthy seeker and a profane intruder. The legends speak of these tunnels as being illuminated by an ever-present, soft light emanating from the walls themselves, and of a strange warmth that keeps them habitable despite the frozen landscape above. But the physical journey is only half the challenge. The true path is said to be an internal one. The seeker must achieve a certain level of spiritual purity and mental clarity to be granted passage. Without this inner alignment, the entrance will remain invisible, or the journey through the tunnels will lead the traveler into an endless, confusing labyrinth from which there is no escape. This concept of a dual journey, requiring both physical endurance and spiritual readiness, is a recurring theme in our investigation, suggesting that the key to the network is not a physical object, but a state of being. The accounts of those who have sought Agartha are fascinating. The Russian artist and mystic Nicholas Roerich, who traveled extensively through Tibet and Central Asia in the early 20th century, wrote of his encounters with lamas, who spoke of Shambhala as a real, physical place. They told him of its advanced science, its powerful leader, the king of the world, and of its role in guiding the evolution of humanity. Roerich himself reported seeing strange phenomena, including a metallic, oval-shaped object flying at high speed over the mountains, which his Tibetan guides identified as a vessel from Shambhala. Another compelling account comes from a French esoteric writer, Saint-Yves d'Alvedre, who in the late 19th century published a book claiming he had been in telepathic communication with the masters of Agartha. He described its social structure, a form of governance called synarchy, based on universal harmony, and its advanced technology, all of which had been revealed to him without ever physically leaving his home in France. While his claims were met with skepticism, his detailed descriptions became a foundational text for Western understanding of the Agartha legend. What makes the Himalayan legends so potent is their deep integration into a living, unbroken spiritual tradition. To the lamas and monks of Tibet, Agartha is not a fantasy. It is a fundamental part of their cosmology, a hidden wellspring of wisdom and power that has a direct, albeit subtle, influence on the surface world. They believe that when our own world descends too far into chaos and war, the forces of Shambhala will emerge to defeat the darkness and usher in a new golden age. Whether this is a literal prophecy or a profound metaphor for the power of enlightened consciousness, it positions the Himalayas as a crucial interface, a place where the veil between our world and the hidden one is at its thinnest as our investigation moves from the realm of ancient myth and spiritual tradition into the modern era. The nature of the evidence begins to shift. The whispers of a subterranean world are no longer confined to sacred texts or the tales of mystics. They begin to surface in the unlikeliest of places, the gritty, practical, and often dangerous world of modern mining. Across the globe, from the deep gold mines of South Africa to the copper mines of North America and the vast mining operations in Australia, there exists a body of anecdotal accounts, a kind of industrial folklore, that is as persistent as it is officially denied. These are stories told by miners, engineers, and geologists who, in the course of their work, claim to have stumbled upon evidence of something that should not be there. The most common type of account involves breaking through a rock face, sometimes thousands of feet below the surface, and discovering not a new vein of ore, but a pre-existing, artificially smooth tunnel. These tunnels are often described as being perfectly circular or oval in shape, with walls that have a polished, almost glassy texture, completely unlike the rough, jagged surfaces of a natural cave or a drilled mine shaft. The technology used to create them is incomprehensible. There are no drill marks, no blast scars, nothing to indicate conventional excavation. They simply exist, ancient and silent, in the deep earth. Sometimes these discovered tunnels are empty, stretching into a darkness that swallows the beams of the miners' lamps. In other, more startling accounts, they contain artifacts. Miners have reported finding metallic objects of unknown composition, strange tools, or even what appear to be the remnants of machinery, all embedded within these impossibly ancient passages. These stories are almost never officially reported. A miner who speaks of such a thing risks ridicule, psychiatric evaluation, or immediate dismissal. The mining companies, focused on production and profit, have no incentive to investigate such anomalies. On the contrary, such a discovery would be a logistical and legal nightmare. The standard procedure, according to the folklore, is to immediately seal the opening, often with concrete, and erase any mention of the breakthrough from the official logs. The area is marked as geologically unstable, and all work is redirected elsewhere. The story then survives only as a hushed rumor, passed between veteran miners over a drink after their shift. Another category of modern anomaly comes from deep drilling operations, particularly those prospecting for oil or conducting geological research. There are stories of drill bits suddenly breaking through into vast, empty spaces where solid rock was expected. Sonar and seismic readings from these boreholes have sometimes indicated the presence of enormous caverns or even metallic structures deep within the Earth's crust. One famous but unverified account, known as the Well to Hell, alleges that a Soviet drilling team in Siberia in the 1980s broke through into a cavity nearly 9 miles deep. They supposedly lowered a microphone into the borehole and recorded the sounds of what seemed to be thousands of tormented human voices. While the story is widely considered a hoax, it taps into this deeper vein of industrial lore about unexpected and inexplicable discoveries in the deep earth. What gives these modern accounts their weight is their consistency. A miner in Australia, a driller in Russia, and an engineer in Chile, with no knowledge of each other and no familiarity with ancient myths, will describe the same phenomena. The perfectly smooth, circular tunnels, the strange metallic artifacts, the vast, unexpected voids in the solid crust. They are practical people, not given to flights of fancy, and their bewilderment and often fear are palpable in the retelling. These accounts suggest that the subterranean network is not just a relic of the distant past. They hint at a world that may still be physically present, a vast and silent architecture that our own industrial burrowings occasionally, and perhaps accidentally, breach. Each time we drill deeper, we run the risk of knocking on a door we did not know was there. And each time this happens, the official response seems to be one of quiet, rapid concealment, a collective turning away from a discovery so profound it would shatter our understanding of the planet and its history. If a vast, inhabited subterranean world has managed to remain hidden from our own inquisitive and invasive civilization for thousands of years, it cannot be by accident. Such a feat of concealment would require a deliberate, sophisticated, and multi-layered system of defense. This brings us to one of the most intriguing and recurring elements in the entire narrative: the concept of the guardians. Across a vast array of cultures and time periods, the stories of entrances to the inner world are almost always accompanied by stories of those who protect them. These guardians are not typically depicted as monstrous beasts or mindless sentinels. Instead, they are described as intelligent, powerful, and highly discerning beings whose primary role is not to destroy intruders, but to test, to filter, and to turn away the unworthy or the unprepared. Their methods, as described in both myth and modern accounts, are as varied as they are effective. The most straightforward form of guardianship is physical. Legends speak of initiated monks in the Himalayas, secret societies of indigenous elders in the Amazon, or a mysterious priesthood in the deserts of Egypt, all of whom have inherited the sacred duty of watching over the physical locations of the entrances. They are the human interface of the security system, using their knowledge of the local terrain and their cultural authority to deflect curiosity and misdirect expeditions. An explorer seeking a legendary cave may find their local guides suddenly unwilling to proceed, or may be subtly led on a circular path that takes them away from the true location. But the guardianship often transcends the purely physical. Many accounts describe a powerful psychological or psychic barrier that surrounds the entrances. Intruders may be overcome with a sudden, inexplicable sense of overwhelming fear, a feeling of being watched by an unseen presence, or a deep, instinctual conviction that they must turn back immediately. Others report sudden confusion and disorientation, losing their sense of direction even in familiar territory, or finding their compasses spinning wildly. This suggests a form of non-lethal defense technology, perhaps a projected electromagnetic or infrasonic field designed to interfere with the human nervous system, inducing states of fear or confusion without causing permanent harm. Such a technology would be an incredibly effective deterrent, an invisible fence that most would not even recognize as artificial. In some traditions, the guardians themselves are not human. The Hopis ant people are one example. The serpentine Nagas of Hindu lore are another. These beings are described as having their own societies and their own domains within the underworld, but also acting as protectors of the thresholds between their world and ours. They are often portrayed as possessing wisdom and powers far beyond human capabilities, including shape-shifting, telepathy, and the ability to manipulate the natural elements. A sudden, localized storm that halts an expedition, a rock slide that blocks a newly discovered tunnel entrance, or an animal that behaves in an unusually aggressive or intelligent way to drive people away. All of these could be interpreted not as acts of nature, but as the work of these non-human guardians. The very environment around a supposed entrance can act as a guardian. Many of these locations are in some of the most inhospitable places on Earth. The crushing pressures of the deep ocean, the oxygen-thin altitudes of the Himalayas, the searing heat of the desert, the disorienting, dense jungle. Nature itself provides a formidable first layer of security. Only the most determined and well-equipped even have a chance of reaching these places. Is it a coincidence that the legendary gateways are so often located in such extreme environments? Or were these locations chosen precisely because their natural hostility makes them easy to protect? The ultimate purpose of this elaborate guardianship is a subject of much speculation. Is it to protect the inner world from us, from our greed, our violence, and the diseases and ecological imbalances we might introduce? Or is it to protect us from the inner world? What if the environment of the subterranean realm, its atmospheric pressure, its unique biology, or its energetic properties, is harmful to surface life? What if the knowledge and technology it holds are so powerful that if released prematurely, they would be weaponized and used to catastrophic effect by our own warring civilizations? In this view, the guardians are not jailers, but quarantine officers, maintaining a necessary separation for the good of both worlds. The filtration process is key. The worthy seeker, the one who approaches with respect, humility, and a pure intention, may be allowed to pass. The treasure hunter, the conqueror, the exploiter, will be turned away. The test, therefore, is not one of strength or cleverness, but of character. This is why the path is so often described as an internal, spiritual journey as much as a physical one. The seeker must become the kind of person who can be trusted with the secrets of the inner world before they are ever granted access. This multi-layered system, physical, psychological, environmental, and spiritual, would be a near-perfect method of concealment, one that has clearly been effective for a very long time. As we delve deeper into the narrative of a hidden subterranean world, we must confront an even more radical possibility. What if this network is not a static relic of a bygone age, but a living, breathing, and perhaps even conscious system? What if the tunnels and the civilization they house are not just active, but are an integral part of the Earth's own biological and energetic processes? This is the concept of a living network, the idea that we inhabit the surface of what is not merely a planet, but a complex, multi-layered organism. In this vision, the tunnel network is akin to a planetary nervous system or a circulatory system, a web of conduits that channel not just people or vehicles, but streams of energy, information, and perhaps even life force itself. The great sacred sites on the surface, Giza, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, would not be isolated monuments, but acupuncture points, nodes where the planet's internal energy comes to the surface and can be interacted with. The builders of these sites, the precursor civilization, would have understood this living geography and constructed their monuments to harmonize with and perhaps even regulate these terrestrial energy flows. The tunnels themselves would follow these natural energy pathways, known in many esoteric traditions as ley lines or dragon lines. This would explain why so many ancient sites seem to be connected by straight lines over vast distances. They are not connected on the surface, but are nodes on a shared, underlying energetic grid, a grid that also forms the blueprint for the subterranean highway. If this is true, then the inhabitants of this network would not see themselves as living in the Earth, but with the Earth. Their technology would be based on a symbiotic relationship with the planet, a form of natural science that our own civilization, with its emphasis on extraction and domination, has failed to comprehend. The stories of walls that glow with their own light might be explained by bioluminescent fungi or crystal technologies, but they could also be a natural property of the rock itself in these high-energy conduits. The strange humming sounds reported by miners and explorers could be the acoustic signature of these immense energies flowing through the crust, the very heartbeat of the planet. This idea also introduces the concept of a planetary consciousness. Many ancient cultures held an animistic worldview, believing that all things, rocks, rivers, mountains, possessed a spirit or consciousness. Modern science has dismissed this as primitive superstition, but what if it is a literal truth we have forgotten? What if the Earth itself is a conscious being, and the subterranean civilization exists in a state of continuous communication and co-creation with it? Their role would be less that of inhabitants and more that of stewards, or even neurons, within a planetary brain. This would explain their profound ecological harmony. They would not pollute their environment. For the same reason, a person would not deliberately poison their own bloodstream. Their survival and the planet's health would be understood as one and the same. This also provides a new context for the guardians. They would not just be protecting a city or a civilization, but the vital organs of the planet itself. The entrances would be like sensitive nerve ganglia, places where the inner world is vulnerable, requiring careful protection from the chaotic and often toxic energies of the surface world. The psychological and environmental barriers would be the planet's own immune system, deflecting anything that is not in harmony with its overall well-being. This vision of a living network, a conscious planet, is perhaps the most profound and challenging aspect of the entire mystery. It asks us to completely reevaluate our relationship with the world we live on. It suggests that our wars, our pollution, our endless conflicts are not just damaging our own societies, but are like a fever, a disease on the skin of a much larger, living entity. It also offers a glimmer of hope. If the planet is indeed a living system, it has the capacity to heal. The subterranean civilization, in this view, might be the keepers of the planetary memory, the guardians of the original blueprint for a healthy world. Their long silence and secrecy would be an act of profound patience, waiting for the fever on the surface to break, waiting for humanity to awaken to the reality that we are not masters of the earth, but cells within its vast, interconnected body. Contact, when it finally comes, would not be an encounter between two separate civilizations, but a moment of reintegration, a healing of a long and painful schism within a single planetary consciousness. Our investigation, having traced the threads of myth and modern anomaly, must now turn to a category of evidence that is both tangible and deeply perplexing: ancient maps. Tucked away in the archives of museums and libraries around the world are a handful of cartographic documents that seem to defy their own historical context. These are maps created centuries ago, long before the age of satellite imagery or aerial surveillance, which nevertheless depict the world with an accuracy that should have been impossible. What is even more astonishing is that some of these maps appear to contain knowledge not just of the surface world, but of a hidden, subterranean geography. The most famous of these is the Piri Reis map of 1513. Created by an Ottoman admiral, it shows the coasts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas with remarkable precision. But its most startling feature is its depiction of the coast of Antarctica, a continent that was not officially discovered until 300 years later. Even more mysteriously, it shows the coastline of Antarctica as it would appear without its massive ice cap. We have only been able to map this subglacial coastline in the last century using modern seismic sounding technology. The map's creator, Piri Reis, noted in the margins that he had based his work on a collection of much older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This only deepens the mystery. Who possessed the technology to accurately map the Antarctic coastline thousands of years ago, and how did they know what it looked like beneath the ice? Another enigmatic map is the Orontius Phineas map of 1531. Like the Piri Reis map, it shows Antarctica, but it goes further, depicting rivers, valleys, and mountain ranges in the continent's interior, all now buried under miles of ice. The Bawach map of 1737 is perhaps the most shocking of all. It shows Antarctica as two separate land masses, divided by a clear sea channel. This is a feature of the subglacial topography that was not confirmed by modern science until the International Geophysical Year in 1958. How could these map makers have known? The standard explanation is that these are lucky coincidences or imaginative flourishes, but the consistency and accuracy of the details make this hard to accept. An alternative theory, central to our investigation, is that these ancient map makers had access to a source of knowledge that has been lost to mainstream history, a source that understood the planet on a global and geological scale. Could this source have been the precursor civilization, the builders of the subterranean network? A civilization with such advanced technology would certainly have possessed the ability to map the entire planet, both its surface and its subglacial features. They would have known the world before the current ice age, when Antarctica was a temperate land. This knowledge, preserved in their subterranean archives, might have been selectively shared or leaked to the surface world over the centuries. Perhaps a few of their ancient maps found their way into the great libraries of the past, like the Library of Alexandria, where they were copied by later scholars before the originals were lost. But there is another, more subtle layer to these maps. Some researchers have noted that when overlaid with modern geological charts, the impossible features on these ancient maps, the rivers in Antarctica, the now vanished islands, seem to align with major fault lines, underground river systems, and other subterranean geological features. What if these maps were not just showing the surface world of a bygone era? What if they were dual-purpose charts, showing both the surface geography and the major routes of the underworld network? The rivers depicted on an ice-free Antarctica might not just be surface rivers. They could be markers for the great subterranean passages that lie beneath. The phantom islands in the Atlantic could be surface-level access points, now submerged, that lead down into the network. This would make these maps not just historical curiosities, but treasure maps of the highest order, guides to a lost world. They would be encoded with a knowledge so profound that later civilizations could copy them without ever understanding their true meaning. This theory provides a compelling explanation for the map's impossible accuracy. The knowledge did not come from surface exploration. It came from a civilization that had already mastered the entire planet, from its highest peaks to its deepest and most secret passages. The Piri Reis and Orontius Phineus maps might be the most compelling physical evidence we have, a faded, cryptic, but undeniable fingerprint of a forgotten global science, a science that saw the world not just as a surface to be sailed, but as a volume to be navigated. The idea that the great monuments of the ancient world are not randomly placed, but are situated on specific, powerful points on the Earth's surface, is an old one. This concept, often associated with the terms ley lines or Earth energies, suggests that the planet is crisscrossed by a grid of invisible energy pathways. In this model, sacred sites like Stonehenge, the Giza pyramids, and Machu Picchu were deliberately built at the intersections, or nodes, of these lines to tap into and harness their natural power. While mainstream science has largely dismissed the idea of ley lines as pseudoscience, the geometric and geographical alignments between these sites are statistically significant and hard to ignore. When we connect this concept to the theory of a global subterranean network, a stunning synthesis begins to emerge. What if the ley lines are not just lines of surface energy, but are the surface traces of the massive energy conduits that flow through the planet's crust? And what if the ancient tunnel network was deliberately constructed to follow these energetic pathways? This would make the entire system not just a transportation network, but an energy grid of planetary scale. The precursor civilization would have been masters of what we might call Earth acupuncture, understanding how to tap into the planet's natural energy circulation. The tunnels would be the meridians, and the great sacred sites on the surface would be the pressure points. This theory provides a powerful, unifying explanation for several enduring mysteries. It explains why ancient megalithic sites across the world, built by cultures with no known contact, share similar design principles and are often built with materials like granite, that are high in quartz crystal, a material known for its piezoelectric properties, its ability to convert mechanical pressure into electrical energy. These structures could have functioned as massive energetic resonators or transformers, drawing power from the subterranean grid and broadcasting it for use on the surface. It also explains the persistent legends of these sites being places of healing, spiritual enlightenment, or even advanced technological phenomena. They were literally power plants, generating a field that could have profound effects on the human body and consciousness. The tunnels themselves would be saturated with this energy, which could have been used to power the lighting systems, the life support, and perhaps even the propulsion for vehicles that traversed the network. The strange humming sounds and electromagnetic anomalies reported near these sites would be the direct, measurable byproduct of this immense, ancient power grid still being active deep beneath our feet. In this vision, the relationship between the surface sites and the underground network is symbiotic. The surface structures act as antennas and regulators, while the subterranean tunnels act as the primary conduits. This would make the entire planet a piece of integrated, living technology, a fusion of geology and advanced engineering. The choice of location for the tunnel entrances would also be dictated by this energetic geography. They would be situated at points where the energy is most stable or most accessible, places that our ancestors recognized as inherently sacred or powerful, long after the original technological purpose was forgotten. This model offers a new way to interpret the consistency of architectural and cultural motifs around the world. The prevalence of pyramid shapes, the use of spiral and serpent symbols, the obsession with astronomical alignments, all of these could be expressions of a single global science, a science based on understanding and harmonizing with the energetic and geometric principles of the planet itself. The precursor civilization would not have been a single empire in the way we understand it, but a global culture united by this shared science. The loss of this knowledge after the great cataclysm would be the true fall of man. Humanity on the surface was disconnected from the planetary grid. We were left with the silent, dormant terminals of a forgotten power system, which we then repurposed as tombs, temples, and tourist attractions, never fully understanding their original function. But deep below, the grid may have remained active, powering the hidden world of the survivors. The guardians of the network would therefore be protecting not just a place, but a power source of unimaginable magnitude. Its rediscovery and potential misuse by our own civilization would be an existential threat. Imagine what one of our modern governments or corporations would do with access to a limitless source of free energy. The potential for both immense good and catastrophic destruction is obvious. The secrecy surrounding the network in this light is not just understandable, it is essential. The ley lines, the sacred sites, and the hidden tunnels are all pieces of a single, magnificent puzzle. They hint at a vision of the earth that is breathtakingly elegant and alive, and a forgotten chapter of human history where we were not just inhabitants of the world, but partners in its cosmic function. If the existence of a global subterranean network, built and perhaps still inhabited by an advanced civilization, is even a remote possibility, then its continued secrecy is one of the greatest feats in all of history. How could something so vast remain hidden in an age of satellites, deep Earth sonar, and a global population of billions? The answer must lie in a secrecy that is as sophisticated and multi-layered as the network itself. This brings us to the purpose of concealment, a question that forces us to look in the mirror and consider how our own civilization might be perceived by another. The most immediate and obvious reason for secrecy is self-preservation. Consider the history of contact between technologically advanced civilizations and less developed ones on the surface of our own planet. The pattern is tragically consistent. Conquest, exploitation, disease, and cultural annihilation. The arrival of Europeans in the Americas, the colonization of Africa, the subjugation of indigenous peoples worldwide. The historical record is an unbroken testament to the dangers of such encounters. If a peaceful, harmonious subterranean civilization were to reveal itself to us, what is the likely outcome? Our governments would see it as a military threat or a strategic asset. Our corporations would see it as a source of new resources and technologies to be patented and profited from. Our religions would see it as a theological crisis or a demonic deception. Our media would sensationalize it, and our population, driven by fear and greed, would likely react with a chaotic mix of worship and violence. From the perspective of a wise and ancient race that has witnessed our entire bloody history from a safe distance, revealing themselves would be an act of civilizational suicide. They would be inviting the very chaos they retreated underground to escape. The secrecy, therefore, is not an act of arrogance, but of profound, historically informed prudence. But the concealment may be designed to protect us as well. Imagine the ontological shock, the shattering of our collective worldview, that would occur if we were presented with undeniable proof of a vastly older, wiser, and more powerful human or quasi-human civilization. It would invalidate our entire understanding of history, religion, and our own place in the universe. The potential for social collapse, for a loss of purpose and meaning on a global scale, would be immense. A benevolent, hidden civilization might choose to withhold its presence, revealing itself only gradually through hints, myths, and subtle interventions, allowing us to adapt to the idea over generations rather than being overwhelmed by it all at once. This is the concept of a prime directive, a non-interference policy, a staple of science fiction, but a deeply logical principle for any advanced civilization dealing with a less mature one. The technology of concealment would also have to be formidable. We have already discussed the environmental, psychological, and physical guardianship of the entrances. But a truly advanced civilization would likely employ more sophisticated methods. Camouflage technology that could make a massive stone door appear as a solid cliff face, not just visually, but to radar and sonar as well. Electromagnetic fields that could deflect satellite surveillance or scramble the instruments of any approaching aircraft or submarine. Even the manipulation of local space-time, creating perceptual distortions that make a location literally unreachable to those who are not tuned to the correct frequency or state of consciousness. These ideas, while speculative, are extrapolations of technologies our own science is beginning to explore. If a civilization has had thousands or even millions of years to perfect them, their ability to remain invisible would be nearly absolute. The final layer of secrecy may be the most effective of all, the control of information on the surface. What if contact has been made, not with the public, but with a select, powerful few within our own governments and secret societies? What if a pact of silence has been in place for decades, or even centuries? The shadow government, or breakaway civilization theories, propose that a small group of insiders has access to knowledge and technology far beyond what is publicly known. If these insiders were in communication with the subterranean civilization, they would have every reason to keep it the most closely guarded secret on Earth. It would give them an unassailable advantage in technology, energy, and geopolitical strategy. They would become the de facto guardians on the surface, actively suppressing any discoveries that might lead the public to the truth, discrediting witnesses, and classifying any hard evidence that comes to light. In this scenario, the secrecy is maintained not just from below, but from above as well. A global conspiracy of silence designed to manage a truth deemed too powerful for the world to handle. The persistent harmony and ancient peace attributed to the subterranean world is a cornerstone of its legend. But what if this peace was not a given? What if it was earned, the result of a conflict so ancient and devastating that its memory survives only in our most visceral and violent myths? This is the forgotten war theory, a darker and more complex narrative that posits that the separation between the surface and the inner worlds was not a gentle retreat, but a violent schism, a planetary civil war between two branches of the same precursor civilization. In this model, the precursor race was not monolithic. It was fractured by a deep philosophical or political divide. One faction, perhaps more technologically and materially focused, wished to continue its expansion and exploitation of the planet's resources. The other, more spiritually and ecologically focused, advocated for a life of harmony and balance with the living Earth. This conflict escalated from a cold war into a hot one, fought with weapons of unimaginable power, technologies that could manipulate tectonic plates, trigger volcanoes, and alter the climate. The magic and sorcery described in ancient texts, the Vimanas and astro weapons of the Hindu epics, the war of the gods in Greek mythology. All of these could be the distorted, mythologized accounts of this prehistoric war, fought with advanced technology. The cataclysm that ended the precursor civilization would not have been an external event, like an asteroid impact, but the self-inflicted result of this war. The surface of the planet was rendered uninhabitable, not by nature, but by the weapons deployed. The Great Flood could have been the result of the polar ice caps being deliberately melted. The years of darkness could have been a nuclear or volcanic winter triggered by weapons that targeted the Earth's crust. In the aftermath of this mutual destruction, the two factions retreated to their respective domains. The harmonious faction, who had perhaps already been developing their subterranean infrastructure, sealed themselves away in the inner Earth, vowing to protect the planet's core from any further surface madness. The remnants of the materialistic faction, shattered and thrown back into a primitive state, were left to struggle for survival on a ruined surface. We would be their descendants. This theory provides a powerful explanation for the enduring dualism in our myths, the constant battle between light and darkness, gods and titans, angels and demons. These are not just moral allegories. They are the faint, scarred memory of a genuine historical conflict. It also explains the role of the Guardians in a more pragmatic military light. They are not just testing for spiritual purity. They are soldiers, guarding a border that was established by a peace treaty at the end of a terrible war. Their job is to prevent any incursion from a surface race they view as genetically and culturally prone to the same destructive impulses as their ancient enemies. The secrecy is not just to protect their peace, but to prevent the resumption of hostilities. They hide because they know that if we discovered them, and more importantly, if we discovered the remnants of the ancient weapons that might still be hidden on the surface or in the shallow parts of the network, we would inevitably try to use them. Our own history of constant warfare would be, from their perspective, proof that we have not changed. This theory also casts the occasional leak of technology or knowledge in a new light. It might not be a benevolent gift. It could be a strategic intervention, a carefully calculated move in a long-running Cold War, designed to guide our development in ways that make us less of a threat, or perhaps to subtly test our reactions. The UFO phenomenon could also be recontextualized within this model. The strange aerial craft seen in our skies might not be from other planets, but reconnaissance vehicles from the inner Earth, monitoring our technological and military progress, a modern form of border patrol. This narrative is undeniably darker. It replaces the idea of a wise, benevolent elder race with a picture of a traumatized, wary civilization of survivors who view us with deep and justifiable suspicion. It suggests that the Earth is not a unified home, but a planet divided by an ancient wound. But it also offers a strange kind of hope. If the schism was a civil war, it means we are related. We share a common ancestry. The potential for peace and reunification, however distant, still exists. The path to contact, in this model, would not just be about achieving spiritual enlightenment. It would be about demonstrating, unequivocally, that we have finally overcome the legacy of our aggressive ancestors. It would require a global renunciation of war, a commitment to ecological healing, and the creation of a stable, planetary civilization. Until that day, the gates will remain sealed, not just by stone and secrecy, but by the memory of a forgotten, world-shattering war. Among the legion of explorers who have been consumed by the mysteries of the world's uncharted regions, few figures are as compelling and tragic as Colonel Percy Fawcett. His story, a blend of meticulous research, obsessive determination, and enigmatic disappearance, serves as a powerful case study in the search for the subterranean world. Fawcett was not a wild-eyed mystic, but a decorated British artillery officer, surveyor, and cartographer. For years, he was employed by the Royal Geographical Society to map the blank spaces of South America, particularly the deadly and unexplored border regions of Brazil and Bolivia. In the course of his work, he became convinced that a great, lost civilization, which he codenamed Z, had once flourished deep within the Amazon jungle. Fawcett's belief was not based on mere fantasy. He was a master of jungle survival and had developed a deep respect for the oral traditions of the indigenous tribes who repeatedly told him stories of ancient stone cities, strange lights, and a race of white-skinned people who lived in the mountains. He also discovered tantalizing archaeological clues, pottery shards and earthworks that hinted at a large, complex society where none was thought to have existed. But his most crucial piece of evidence was a document he found in the National Library of Rio de Janeiro, known as Manuscript 512. Written by a Portuguese explorer in the 18th century, it described the discovery of a magnificent, abandoned stone city in the heart of the jungle, complete with arches, temples, and strange inscriptions. Fawcett became convinced that this was his city of Z, What connects Fawcett's quest to our investigation is his evolving belief about the nature of Z. In his later years, he began to speculate that Z was not just an isolated city, but perhaps a surface outpost of a much larger, subterranean civilization. He wrote of his belief in a network of caves and tunnels, and of the possibility that the original inhabitants of Z had retreated underground. He spoke of strange acoustic phenomena in the jungle, of a low, persistent humming that seemed to come from beneath the earth. He became fascinated with the idea that the white Indians of legend were the guardians of these places. In 1925, Fawcett, along with his son Jack and Jack's friend Raleigh Rimmel, embarked on their final expedition to find Z. They ventured into the unexplored Xingu region of Brazil, a place from which few outsiders had ever returned. After a few months, their dispatches, which had been sent back by runners, abruptly stopped. The party vanished without a trace. The disappearance of Percy Fawcett became one of the great mysteries of the 20th century. Dozens of rescue missions were launched over the subsequent decades, many of which also ended in tragedy. While the most likely explanation is that the party succumbed to disease, starvation, or an attack by an uncontacted tribe, the complete lack of any remains or equipment has kept more esoteric theories alive. Did Fawcett find his city of Z? And if he did, was it an entrance to the subterranean world he had come to believe in? Could he and his companions have been granted entry? A one-way ticket from which they could not or would not return? The details surrounding his final journey are tantalizing. He deliberately traveled with a very small party, believing a large expedition would be seen as an invasion. He also sent back a message saying that he was close to his goal, and that if he did not return, no rescue party should be sent, as their fate would be his own. This sounds less like the caution of an explorer and more like the resolve of someone about to cross a point of no return. Fawcett's story embodies the immense difficulty and danger of the search. He was an expert, equipped with the best knowledge and survival skills of his day. He respected the indigenous cultures and took their stories seriously. Yet, he vanished. His fate serves as a stark warning. The jungle, or whatever lies within or beneath it, does not yield its secrets easily. But his obsession and his meticulous research also provide a crucial data point. An experienced, rational surveyor became convinced, based on years of first-hand evidence, that the Amazon jungle concealed the remnants of a highly advanced civilization with deep connections to an underground world. Whether he was right, and whether he paid the ultimate price for that knowledge, remains a secret kept by the silent, green labyrinth of the Amazon. His story is a testament to the powerful pull of this mystery, a pull strong enough to lead a man of science and reason to walk off the edge of the known world and into the heart of a legend. If Colonel Fawcett's story represents the terrestrial search for a gateway, then the accounts of Admiral Richard E. Byrd represent the polar axis of the same mystery. Byrd, a celebrated American naval officer, pioneering aviator, and Medal of Honor recipient, was one of the most famous explorers of the 20th century. He led numerous expeditions to both the Arctic and the Antarctic, pushing the boundaries of aviation and polar exploration. It is in the unofficial, controversial, and deeply contested parts of his story that we find a direct and startling intersection with the theory of a subterranean world. The narrative revolves around a secret diary, which is said to have been written by Byrd and suppressed for decades after his death. The authenticity of this diary is fiercely debated, and it is not accepted by mainstream historians. However, its contents have become a foundational text for Hollow Earth and inner world theories, and its details are too specific and compelling to be ignored in our investigation. The diary purports to document a flight that Byrd made in February 1947 during Operation High Jump, a massive U.S. Navy expedition to Antarctica. According to the entry, Byrd flew his plane beyond the geographic South Pole and into a region that should not have existed. Instead of an endless expanse of ice, he reported flying over a lush green valley with mountains, forests, rivers, and even a large animal that resembled a mammoth. The air temperature was warm, and his instruments began to malfunction. He then describes seeing strange, disc-shaped flying machines approach his plane. They communicated with him via radio, in a slightly accented English, and guided him to a landing in a shimmering, crystalline city. There, he was taken to meet a being he called the Master, a figure of great age and wisdom. The Master informed Byrd that they were inhabitants of the Ariani, the inner world of the Earth. They had been watching the surface world with growing concern, particularly after the detonation of the first atomic bombs. They warned that humanity was on a path of self-destruction, and that they had sent their flying machines, their Flugelrads, to the surface to observe. They expressed a deep fear that humanity would bring its wars and its destructive technologies down upon the entire planet, destroying both the surface and the inner worlds. Byrd was tasked with taking this message of warning back to the surface world. After the meeting, he was guided back to his plane and escorted out of the hidden valley, returning to the icy reality of Antarctica. Upon his return to the United States, the diary claims that Byrd was debriefed by top military and government officials and then sworn to absolute silence. The official purpose of Operation High Jump was scientific research and training, but its scale, nearly 5,000 men, a carrier, and numerous ships and aircraft, has always struck many as excessive for that purpose. The mission was also planned to last for 6 to 8 months, but was abruptly terminated after only 8 weeks. The official reason was the early onset of the Antarctic winter, but the timing, immediately after Byrd's alleged encounter, has fueled endless speculation. Was Byrd's experience real? Was it a hallucination brought on by the stress and sensory deprivation of polar flight? Or is the entire diary a clever and elaborate fabrication? It is impossible to say for certain, but what is significant is how neatly the account fits into the broader pattern of our investigation. We see the theme of a technologically and spiritually advanced hidden civilization. We see their concern with the surface world's self-destructive tendencies. We see the use of advanced aerial technology. And we see the immediate suppression of the encounter by surface authorities. The concept of the poles as entrances or openings to an inner world is one of the oldest tenets of Hollow Earth theory. The idea is that due to the planet's rotation, the centrifugal force would have created polar depressions or holes leading into the interior. While modern geology does not support this, the Byrd story provides a powerful narrative anchor for the idea. It suggests that the poles are not just geographic points, but gateways, thresholds where the veil between the two worlds is thin. Whether fact or fiction, the story of Admiral Byrd's secret journey has become an indelible part of the legend, a modern myth that transports the ancient idea of a hidden world into the heart of the 20th century's military-industrial complex. It hints that the greatest discovery of the modern age may have already been made and then immediately classified. The most significant barrier to accepting the possibility of a vast subterranean world is, for many, the solid and seemingly irrefutable model of the Earth provided by modern geology. We are taught from a young age that the planet is a series of concentric layers, a thin crust, a thick mantle of semi-molten rock, a liquid outer core of iron and nickel, and a solid inner core. This model, based on the study of seismic waves generated by earthquakes, appears to leave no room for the colossal voids, cities, and ecosystems of the underworld legend. But is this model as complete and certain as we believe? Science is not a static body of facts, but a process of constant refinement and discovery. Our understanding of the Earth's deep interior is based almost entirely on indirect evidence. We have never drilled more than a few miles into the crust. Everything we know about the mantle and the core is an interpretation, a theory based on how vibrations travel through different mediums. It is a sophisticated and powerful theory, but it is not the same as direct observation. This is where the anomalies begin to surface. For decades, seismologists have noted inconsistencies in their data, moments when seismic waves behave in unexpected ways. They may speed up, slow down, or be deflected in patterns that do not perfectly match the standard model of a solid or liquid interior. These are often called seismic discontinuities. The conventional explanation for these anomalies is that they are caused by variations in rock density, temperature, or mineral composition within the mantle. But some researchers have proposed a more radical interpretation. What if some of these discontinuities are not caused by changes in rock type, but by the waves encountering massive voids or non-geological structures? A seismic wave traveling through solid rock that suddenly hits a cavern the size of a continent, perhaps with its own atmosphere and internal structures, would behave in a very strange way. It would reflect and refract in patterns that would be difficult for geologists, working from the assumption of a solid interior to interpret. This would not disprove the general layered model of the Earth, but it would suggest that the layers, particularly the crust and the upper mantle, are far more complex and perhaps far less solid than we assume. Another area of scientific mystery lies in the Earth's deep water cycle. We know there are vast quantities of water locked within the minerals of the mantle, an amount that may equal or exceed all the water in our surface oceans. Scientists are still unsure how this water circulates. Recent discoveries have shown that some of this water can make its way to the surface through geological processes. What if the ancient tunnel network is not just a human-made artifact, but a part of this natural deep water cycle? What if the precursor civilization discovered and then expanded upon a pre-existing network of natural conduits carved by water over geological time? This would be a form of planetary-scale biomimicry, using a natural system as the foundation for their own infrastructure. This also connects to the legends of underground rivers and lakes that are so common in the lore. They may be tapping into this deep, primordial water, a source far purer than anything on the polluted surface. Then, there is the mystery of the Earth's magnetic field, which is generated by the flow of the liquid outer core. The field is not uniform. It has strange anomalies and fluctuations, and it has reversed its polarity many times in the past. What if the subterranean civilization has learned to tap into and manipulate this immense energy source? Their cities and technologies could be powered by it. The electromagnetic fields they generate could be the source of the compass deviations and instrument malfunctions reported near their entrances. It could even be the basis for the invisible fence of their guardian technology. We must remember that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Our deep Earth sensing technologies are still in their infancy. We are only just beginning to get a blurry picture of the world beneath our feet. To state with absolute certainty that there are no large-scale voids or artificial structures deep within the crust is to make an argument from ignorance. It is to assume that if something existed, we would have already found it. The history of science is a history of such assumptions being overturned. The deep ocean, once thought to be a lifeless void, is now known to be teeming with complex ecosystems. The universe, once thought to be empty space, is now known to be filled with dark matter and dark energy that we cannot see, but whose effects we can measure. The deep Earth remains one of the last great frontiers of exploration. It is entirely possible that it holds surprises as profound as any we have found in the deep sea or deep space. The science of the impossible is simply the science we have not yet understood. The legends of the inner world may not be a contradiction of our science, but a challenge to expand it, to be open to the possibility that our planet is far more mysterious, complex, and perhaps far more alive than our current models can explain. To truly grasp the potential nature of a global subterranean system, we may need to shift our perspective from a purely mechanical or architectural one to a biological one. Let us entertain a grand metaphor. What if the tunnel network functions as the Earth's circulatory system? In the body, arteries and veins transport vital resources, oxygen, nutrients, water, to every cell and carry away waste. They form a complex, interconnected web that sustains the life of the entire organism. Now, picture the Earth in the same way. The tunnels would be the great arteries, not carved arbitrarily, but following the planet's own natural geological and energetic pathways. The blood they carry could be many things. In the most literal sense, it could be water. We know of massive, continent-spanning aquifers and underground river systems. The network could be an enhancement of this natural plumbing, a way to manage and distribute the planet's most precious resource. This would give the subterranean civilization a level of control over the world's hydrology that is almost godlike. They could potentially create oases in deserts or cause droughts by rerouting these deep currents. But the circulation could be more than just water. It could be energy. As we've discussed, the tunnels may follow ley lines, the Earth's energetic meridians. In this model, they are conduits for the planet's own life force, a form of geothermal or electromagnetic energy that the precursor civilization learned to harness. The cities and outposts along the network would be like organs, drawing the power they need from this constant, flowing source. This would be the ultimate form of sustainable energy, a direct partnership with the planet's own metabolism. The system could also circulate life itself. The legends of the network as a genetic arc during cataclysms fit perfectly into this model. The tunnels would be the pathways through which seeds, animals, and the progenitors of humanity were moved to safe, subterranean biodomes and then redistributed to the surface world after the danger had passed. The network would ensure the survival and then the reseeding of the planetary biosphere. This circulatory system would also need a heart, a central pump. In many of the Hollow Earth theories, this role is played by the inner sun, a central, luminous core that provides light and warmth. But in a less literal interpretation, the heart could be the Earth's own molten core, its immense geothermal and magnetic engine. The subterranean civilization would have built their world in the habitable zone between this powerful engine and the chaotic surface, learning to tap the energy of the former while being shielded from the instability of the latter. This metaphor of a planetary circulatory system also reframes the relationship between the surface and the inner worlds. We, on the surface, would be like skin cells, essential for interacting with the external environment, space, the sun, but largely unaware of the vast, complex inner workings of the body we live on. We are vulnerable, temporary, and subject to external damage. The subterranean civilization would be like the internal organs, protected, stable, and responsible for the long-term functioning of the whole system. Their secrecy would be the body's own natural protection of its vital organs. You do not expose your heart to the outside world. This vision is both humbling and empowering. It suggests that the planet is not a dead ball of rock we happen to live on, but an integrated living system. It also implies that our own actions, our pollution, our wars, our nuclear detonations, are not just a threat to ourselves, but are like a disease or a wound to the planet organism itself. The warnings reported by Admiral Byrd's master or in other contactee accounts would not just be moral lectures. They would be the planet's own pain signals, a message from the deep interior that the surface is becoming dangerously toxic to the entire system. If we continue this metaphor, then healing the planet would require re-establishing a healthy circulation, a conscious connection between the surface skin and the inner organs. This would be the ultimate purpose of contact, not an invasion or a revelation of secrets, but a form of planetary medicine, a process of remembering that we are part of a single, interconnected, and profoundly alive world. The global tunnel network would be the physical manifestation of this interconnectedness, the silent, waiting vascular system of a living Earth. To trace the ghost of a global civilization, one must look for its faintest and most enduring fingerprints. Technology crumbles, cities turn to dust, but language, in its deep structures and shared roots, can preserve the memory of a common origin for millennia. This brings us to the linguistic evidence, the subtle but persistent echoes in the words and concepts used by ancient cultures across the world to describe the world beneath. A comparative analysis of mythology reveals a startling consistency in the vocabulary associated with the underworld. Consider the root words. In many ancient language families, from Indo-European to Mesoamerican, the words for earth, below, cave, or darkness are often linguistically related to concepts of origin, womb, seed, and ancestor. This is not merely poetic association. It suggests a deeply ingrained cultural memory that humanity's origins, or at least its salvation, lie in the world below. The Mayan underworld of Xibalba, for example, shares phonetic and conceptual similarities with the Jewish concept of Sheol and the Norse Helheim. All are described as subterranean realms, but also as places of passage or origin. The Hindu kingdom of Patala, the land of the Naga serpent people, has a name that resonates with words for foot or base in other languages, implying it is the foundation of the world. What if these shared linguistic roots are not the result of cultural diffusion across the surface, but are the remnants of a single, ancient, global language, a precursor tongue spoken by the civilization that built the tunnel network? As the survivors of the cataclysm emerged to reseed the planet, they would have carried this language with them. Over thousands of years, it would have fractured into the thousands of dialects and languages we have today. But the core concepts, the words, for the most fundamental aspects of their story, would have been preserved, like genetic markers in a scattered population. We see further evidence in the specific terminology used to describe the inhabitants of this lower world. The Hopis Anu Sinom, ant people, and the Sumerian Anunnaki. The Hindu Nagas, serpents, and the Mesoamerican feathered serpent gods like Quetzalcoatl, who is often associated with caves and the underworld. The elves, or dwarves, of Norse mythology, who were master craftsmen living beneath the mountains, and the jinn of Arabian lore, who were often said to inhabit ruins and underground places. While the specific names and descriptions vary, the underlying archetype is consistent. A powerful, technologically skilled, non-human or quasi-human race that lives underground and has a complex, often secretive relationship with humanity. The language used to describe their technology is also revealing. Ancient texts are filled with words for which we have no modern equivalent, words that seem to describe devices or principles we do not understand. The Vimanas of the Sanskrit epics are not just flying chariots. The texts describe their propulsion systems, their materials, and their capabilities in technical detail. The Astra weapons are not just magic arrows. They are described with the destructive power of modern superweapons. What if these words are not imaginative hyperbole, but are the last surviving technical terms from the precursor language, attempts by later, less advanced cultures to describe a technology they had seen but could no longer replicate? The linguistic trail also appears in place names. Across the world, there are mountains, caves, and regions whose ancient names translate to things like gateway to the underworld, navel of the earth, or home of the serpent gods. These are often the very same locations associated with strange magnetic anomalies, unexplored tunnel systems, and legends of inner earth contact. It is as if the ancient peoples deliberately mark these places on our surface maps, using language as a way to preserve the knowledge of their significance for future generations who could understand the code. This linguistic evidence, while circumstantial, is powerfully suggestive. It transforms the world's collection of myths from a disconnected library of fantasies into a single, heavily redacted, and poorly translated historical document. It hints at a shared cultural bedrock, a common story that has been told in 1,000 different ways, but whose central elements, the cataclysm, the subterranean refuge, the advanced guardian race, and the hope of a future return, remain stubbornly intact. The words themselves are the breadcrumbs, the faintest trail leading back to the entrance of a forgotten world. The enduring mystery of lost civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria has captivated the human imagination for centuries. These are tales of magnificent, highly advanced societies that were consumed by the sea in a great cataclysm. But what if they were not entirely lost? What if the story of their destruction is only half the story? What if the other half lies not at the bottom of the ocean, but deep within the earth. This is where the legends of the lost continents intersect powerfully with the theory of the global tunnel network. In this synthesized narrative, the Atlanteans and Lemurians were not just advanced, they were the precursor civilization, the original architects of the subterranean world. They would have possessed a deep understanding of geology and planetary cycles, and they would have seen the coming cataclysm, be it a pole shift, an asteroid impact, or the geological instability that would sink their own lands. In response to this impending doom, they would have initiated a project of staggering scale and vision, the construction of the tunnel network as a global arc. This was their Plan B, a way to preserve their civilization by moving it, not to another continent, but to another, safer layer of the planet itself. The great cities of Atlantis and Lemuria, with their advanced technology and crystal power grids, would have been the surface capitals of an empire that already had a significant, and perhaps even older, subterranean component. The tunnels would have been used for travel, trade, and communication long before the final disaster. The cataclysm, when it came, would not have been an end, but a transition, a deliberate and planned migration of the core of their civilization from the vulnerable surface to the protected interior. Only a fraction of their population may have been chosen or able to make this journey. The rest, along with the magnificent surface cities, would have perished, leaving behind only the legend of a golden age suddenly and tragically ended. The survivors, now fully subterranean, would have become the civilization we know in myth as Agartha. They would be the Atlanteans and Lemurians, not lost, but hidden, the guardians of their own immense legacy. This theory provides a compelling origin story for the inhabitants of the inner world. It explains their advanced technology, their profound wisdom, and their deep, melancholy understanding of cataclysm and survival. It also explains their physical description in some accounts as being tall, fair, and almost ethereal, the white gods or white Indians of myth, a description that matches Plato's account of the Atlanteans. The global extent of their legendary empire would also explain the global nature of the tunnel network. Atlantis was said to have had outposts in Egypt, the Americas, and Western Europe. Lemuria was said to have stretched across the Pacific. A tunnel system connecting these far-flung parts of their empire would have been a logical and necessary piece of infrastructure. After the cataclysm, this hidden civilization would have adopted a strict policy of non-interference. Having lost their own surface world, they would be deeply wary of the chaotic and primitive survivor cultures that began to emerge on the new surface. They would watch, perhaps subtly guide, but they would not reveal themselves, knowing that their reappearance could trigger the very same conflicts and lust for power that may have contributed to their original downfall. The knowledge they preserved in their subterranean archives, the Hall of Records beneath Giza, or the Metal Library of the Andes, would be the complete story of the antediluvian world, its achievements, its folly, and the great warning it holds for any civilization that grows too powerful for its own wisdom. This synthesis of the Atlantis, Lemuria myth with the Agartha legend creates a single, epic narrative of human history, one that is far older, more dramatic, and more hopeful than the one we are taught. It is hopeful because it suggests that the wisdom of our most ancient and brilliant ancestors was not lost forever, but is being held in trust, waiting for a time when we, their distant descendants on the surface, are finally ready to receive it. The tunnels are the veins of this forgotten world, and the stories are the map that might one day lead us back to the heart of our own lost legacy. In our relentless search for the key that might unlock this global mystery, we have considered physical artifacts, historical accounts, and geological anomalies. But many of the most ancient traditions insist that the ultimate key is not a thing to be held, but a force to be generated. This is the role of sound and frequency, a concept so alien to our modern mechanical way of thinking that we have relegated it to the realm of magic, yet it may be the most advanced science of all. The core idea is that matter itself is not solid, but is a standing wave of energy, a vibration. If you can understand and replicate the specific resonant frequency of an object, you can influence it, even control it. This is the principle behind a singer shattering a crystal glass with their voice. Now, imagine this principle applied on a monumental scale, with a technology capable of generating and focusing immense sonic power. In this model, the impossibly smooth walls of the ancient tunnels were not melted with heat, but were shaped by resonant frequencies that caused the rock to disintegrate or change its state. The massive megalithic blocks were not lifted with cranes and levers, but were made temporarily weightless by being tuned to a specific frequency that counteracted the effects of gravity. The great stone doors that seal the entrances to the network would not have hinges or handles. They would be opened by projecting the correct sonic key, a precise harmonic tone that causes the door to resonate and either slide aside, become permeable, or temporarily dematerialize. This sonic technology would be the ultimate master key, capable of shaping, moving, and passing through solid matter. The evidence for this forgotten science is, like so much else, circumstantial, but deeply compelling. We see it in the acoustic properties of ancient structures. Many megalithic chambers, like the Newgrange Passage tomb in Ireland or the Hippodrome in Malta, were built to be powerful resonance chambers. Certain sound frequencies, particularly low-frequency chanting or drumming, are amplified to an extraordinary degree, creating a physical vibration that can be felt throughout the body and which can induce altered states of consciousness. Were these just ceremonial chambers, or were they functional devices, acoustic locks, or communication hubs connected to the deeper network? We see the memory of this science preserved in our myths. The story of Joshua bringing down the walls of Jericho with the sound of trumpets. The Hindu concept of mantra, where specific sounds are believed to have the power to create and change reality. The Aboriginal legends of the didgeridoo being used to communicate with the spirits of the earth. These are not just stories about music. They are stories about the functional, world-altering power of sound. The guardians of the network, in this context, would be masters of this sonic science. The strange humming sounds reported near alleged entrances might be a part of their security system, a constant, low-frequency broadcast designed to detune or disorient intruders. The psychological effects, fear, confusion, a sense of dread, could be the direct result of being exposed to an infrasonic field that interferes with the brain's own electrical frequencies. To gain entry, a seeker would have to do more than just find the right location. They would have to learn how to generate the correct frequency. This could be done with a technological device, but the legends suggest a more organic method: the human voice. The traditions of monastic chanting, where a specific tone is held for hours, might not just be a form of meditation, but a practical exercise in generating the resonant frequency required to open a portal. The purity of heart and spiritual readiness spoken of in the myths would have a direct physical corollary. A mind in a state of chaos and fear produces a chaotic, dissonant energy signature. A mind in a state of calm, focused intention produces a coherent, harmonic signature. The gate, being a finely tuned resonant device, would only open for the latter. The key is not just the sound, but the state of the being producing the sound. This is a science that is deeply integrated with consciousness, a concept our own fragmented, materialistic science is only just beginning to grapple with. If this science is real, then the entire subterranean network could be a massive, planetary-scale musical instrument, a resonant cavity that is kept in tune by the civilization within it. Their technology, their architecture, and their own consciousness would all be part of a single, harmonic system. Contact with our own out-of-tune surface world would be inherently dangerous, a source of dissonance that could threaten their entire reality. The sonic key, therefore, is a profound and elegant concept. It is the ultimate security system, one that cannot be reverse-engineered or bypassed by force. It can only be matched. To open the door, you must become the key. You must learn to resonate with the harmony of the world you wish to enter. One of the most disorienting and yet consistent details in the accounts of those who claim to have entered the subterranean world is the experience of temporal distortion. Time itself seems to behave differently in the deep earth. A journey that felt like a few hours might be revealed to have taken several days upon returning to the surface. Conversely, an experience that seemed to last for weeks could have taken place in a matter of minutes of surface time. This is not just a matter of losing track of time in a dark, unfamiliar environment. It is a fundamental shift in the perception and flow of temporality, an effect so profound that it suggests the inner world may operate under a different set of physical laws. Mainstream physics, through Einstein's theories of relativity, has shown us that time is not an absolute constant. It is relative to the observer's frame of reference and can be affected by gravity and velocity. A clock in a strong gravitational field will tick slower than a clock in a weaker one. While the effects we can measure are minuscule, is it possible that deep within the Earth, in the presence of immense geological pressures and perhaps unknown energy fields, these relativistic effects are magnified to a significant degree? Some theorists propose that the Earth's core, or the hypothetical inner sun of the hollow Earth model, generates a powerful gravitational or energetic field that warps space-time in its vicinity. The entire subterranean realm would exist within this distorted temporal field. For its inhabitants, time would feel perfectly normal. But for a visitor from the surface, or for an observer looking in, the difference would be dramatic. This could be a natural phenomenon, a consequence of the unique deep Earth environment. But what if it is artificial? What if the precursor civilization, with its mastery of physics, learned not just to navigate the tunnels, but to control the temporal environment within them? They could have created temporal zones, areas where time is deliberately slowed down or sped up for specific purposes. A library or an archive where knowledge needs to be preserved for eons could be placed in a slow time zone, protecting it from decay. A hydroponic farm could be placed in a fast time zone, allowing crops to grow from seed to harvest in a matter of hours. This would give them a level of control over their environment and their own development that is almost impossible to comprehend. The implications for the inhabitants themselves are staggering. If they live in a realm where time flows, for instance, at half the rate of the surface, their natural lifespans would be effectively doubled from our perspective. The ageless, or immortal, beings of myth could be a literal description of a people living in a different temporal stream. A civilization that has had, from its own perspective, not just thousands, but tens of thousands of years of continuous, uninterrupted development would have an almost insurmountable advantage in knowledge, wisdom, and technology. They would see our own frantic, short-lived empires rise and fall like the flickering of a firefly. This temporal difference would also be another layer of their perfect concealment. How do you find a civilization that can shift its temporal coordinates? How do you communicate with a people for whom a brief conversation could last a decade of your own time? The barrier between the worlds would not just be physical, but temporal. The legends of heroes who journey to the underworld and return to find that 100 years have passed on the surface are found in cultures worldwide, from the Japanese tale of Urashima Taro to the Irish stories of Oisin. These are often interpreted as cautionary tales about the dangers of the fairy world. But what if they are a literal warning about the physics of the subterranean realm? The temporal distortion would also explain the seeming paradox of a civilization that is ancient, yet still active. From their point of view, the cataclysm that drove them underground may have happened only a few generations ago. Their memory of the surface world would be fresh, and their caution regarding it would be deeply ingrained. This also provides a new context for their patient, long-term observation of us. They are not in a hurry. They have time, vast, deep, slow-moving time, on their side. They can afford to wait for centuries or millennia for the surface world to reach the necessary state of maturity for contact, because from their perspective, it will feel like a much shorter wait. The concept of a different time flow deep within the earth is perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of the entire mystery. It challenges our most fundamental assumption that we all share a single, universal now. But if time itself is a local variable, then the Earth is not a single world, but a planet of many worlds, each with its own rhythm, its own history, and its own future, all coexisting in the same space, separated only by the invisible and perhaps impassable currents of the river of time. In an age where our eyes in the sky can read a license plate from orbit and our sonar can map the deepest oceanic trenches, it seems inconceivable that a network of continent-spanning tunnels could remain hidden. But our technology, for all its power, is designed to look for things we expect to find. It is in the gaps of that expectation, in the anomalous data that is filtered out or dismissed as error, that the evidence for the subterranean world may be hiding in plain sight. This brings us to the field of remote sensing, the use of satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar (GPR), and seismic tomography to see what is invisible to the naked eye. In recent decades, these technologies have given us tantalizing glimpses of massive, unexplained structures beneath the surface of our planet. Satellite imagery, particularly using infrared and synthetic aperture radar, has revealed geometric patterns and rectilinear shapes under the sands of deserts, the ice of Antarctica, and the dense canopy of the Amazon. One of the most famous examples is the discovery of the lost city of Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands, in Oman, which was located by tracing the faint lines of ancient caravan routes visible only from space. But other, even larger and more geometric structures have been found that do not correspond to any known civilization. These are often dismissed as natural geological formations, but their perfect right angles and symmetrical layouts strain the definition of natural. Ground-penetrating radar, which sends radio waves into the ground and reads the echoes, has produced even more startling results. GPR surveys conducted around ancient megalithic sites have frequently revealed extensive systems of chambers and tunnels that are not part of the official archaeological record. In 2015, a GPR scan under the Kukulkan Pyramid at Chichen Itza revealed that the entire structure was built over a massive cenote, or underground river-filled cave. In Bosnia, a controversial investigation of a group of hills claimed by some to be ancient pyramids has used GPR to map what appears to be a network of tunnels and chambers deep within them. While the mainstream archaeological community has rejected the pyramid theory, the existence of the underground network is harder to dispute. But the most powerful tool for peering into the deep earth is seismic tomography. By analyzing the seismic waves from thousands of earthquakes as they travel through the planet, scientists can build a 3D map of the Earth's interior. This is the technology that supports the standard model of the mantle and core. However, the data is not always clean. It contains massive anomalies, zones where the waves are unexpectedly slowed down or sped up. These are known as large low shear velocity provinces, LLSVPS, continent-sized blobs of material deep in the mantle, one under Africa and one under the Pacific Ocean, whose origin and composition are a complete mystery. The standard theory is that they are piles of dense, hot rock. But what if they are something else? What if they're the seismic signature of a vast, non-geological structure, a region with a different density and composition, because it is, in fact, an artificially maintained environment? This is a radical speculation, but it highlights how much of our deep Earth model is based on interpretation. An anomaly is only an anomaly because it deviates from an expected pattern. If the expected pattern is wrong, the anomaly might be the signal we have been looking for. The technology of remote sensing is a double-edged sword. While it has the potential to reveal the secrets of the inner world, it could also be used to conceal them. A government or shadow agency with access to the raw satellite and seismic data could easily filter out any evidence of artificial subterranean structures before the data is released to the public academic community. The anomalies that do get published would be the ones that are too large to hide, like the LLSVPS, which are then given a plausible, naturalistic explanation. The search for the subterranean world, therefore, may also be a search for suppressed data. Independent researchers and citizen scientists, poring over publicly available data from sources like Google Earth, have been responsible for identifying many of these surface and shallow subsurface anomalies. They are the digital cartographers of this hidden world, piecing together the puzzle from the faint clues that have been allowed to slip through the veil of secrecy. Each discovery of a geometric shape under the ice, a strange void in a seismic map, or an unexplained tunnel on a GPR scan, taken alone, can be explained away. But taken together, they form a compelling and consistent mosaic, a faint but persistent image of another world, waiting silently and patiently beneath our own. The continued invisibility of a potential world-spanning tunnel network in an age of pervasive surveillance and geological exploration leads us to a deeply unsettling but logical line of inquiry: the theory of a political cover-up. This theory proposes that the truth of the subterranean world is not unknown, but is, in fact, well known to a select few at the highest levels of power, and that a coordinated, multi-generational effort has been made to keep this knowledge from the general public. The motives for such a cover-up would be as complex as they are powerful. The first and most critical would be the preservation of social stability. As we've discussed, the revelation of an ancient, superior civilization living beneath our feet would shatter the foundations of our society. Religions, which place humanity at the center of a divine story, would face an existential crisis. National governments, whose authority is based on the concept of sovereign territory, would be revealed to be surface-level tenants on a planet they do not truly control. Our entire economic system, based on scarcity and competition for resources, would be thrown into chaos by the prospect of a civilization that may have mastered limitless energy and post-scarcity living. To prevent this global panic and the collapse of the established order, a policy of absolute secrecy would be the only logical choice for those in power. This would not be a conspiracy of evil, but a conspiracy of control, a decision made by a few to protect the many from a truth they are deemed unready to handle. The mechanisms of this cover-up would be vast and deeply embedded. It would involve the classification of scientific data from geological surveys, satellite imagery, and deep-sea exploration. Archaeological digs that get too close to a sensitive site would be shut down under a plausible pretext, such as national security or environmental protection. The artifacts recovered would vanish into the black vaults of intelligence agencies or private collectors. Military bases would be established in remote locations, like the Antarctic or remote desert regions, not just for strategic purposes, but to guard the known entrances to the network. The UFO phenomenon would be actively managed, with a policy of official ridicule and denial mixed with the quiet, top-secret investigation of any genuine sightings, which might be related to the subterranean civilization's own aerial vehicles. The media and academia would be subtly influenced. Scientists who pursue research in this area would find their funding cut and their careers stalled. Journalists who get too close to the story would be discredited. The topic would be relegated to the fringe, to the realm of conspiracy theory, ensuring that no mainstream, credible institution ever investigates it seriously. We see evidence of this pattern throughout recent history. The story of Admiral Byrd and the immediate suppression of his findings. The persistent rumors of a shadow government that operates outside of public accountability. The creation of vast, deep underground military bases, DUMBS, whose existence is officially acknowledged, but whose true purpose is a matter of intense speculation. Are these bases just for command and control during a nuclear war, or are they a modern attempt to connect with or replicate the subterranean world. This theory also suggests that a form of contact or a treaty may already exist between the surface power elite and the inner Earth civilization. The surface powers would agree to maintain the secrecy and protect the entrances in exchange for certain benefits, perhaps limited access to advanced technology, scientific knowledge, or simply a guarantee of non-interference. This would create a breakaway civilization on the surface, a small group of insiders whose technological and scientific understanding is decades or even centuries ahead of the public world. They would be the true gatekeepers, the human guardians who have taken on the ancient role of filtering access between the two worlds. The implications of this are profound. It would mean that human history is not what it seems. It would mean that the path of our technological development may have been subtly guided. And it would mean that the greatest secret in the world is not that we are alone, but that we are not, and that a chosen few have been managing our ignorance for their own strategic purposes. The ultimate goal of this grand deception would be to manage the inevitable moment of disclosure, the time when the secrecy can no longer be maintained. By controlling the narrative, they could shape the public's reaction, preventing chaos and ensuring that the new reality is integrated in a way that preserves their own power structures. This is a dark and cynical view, but it is one that is built on a realistic assessment of how power, secrecy, and human nature operate. It suggests that the final barrier to discovering the inner world may not be rock or distance, but a locked door in the highest echelons of our own society, a door to which very few have the key. Amidst the layers of myth, geology, and conspiracy, there is another dimension to this mystery, one that is closer and more intimate than any tunnel or hidden city. This is the psychological dimension, the idea that the search for a subterranean world is also a profound metaphor for the search for the hidden depths of human consciousness. In this interpretation, the story of Agartha and the global tunnel network is a grand, collective dream, a projection of our own inner landscape onto the physical world. The surface world represents the conscious mind, the part of ourselves we know, the world of logic, reason, and everyday reality. It is busy, chaotic, and often in conflict. The subterranean world, the inner earth, represents the subconscious and unconscious mind, the vast, hidden realm of memory, intuition, archetypes, and untapped potential. It is ancient, silent, and holds the keys to our deepest nature. The journey into the tunnels, therefore, is a journey inward. The guardians are our own psychological defense mechanisms, fear, doubt, denial, that protect us from confronting truths about ourselves that we are not yet ready to face. The labyrinth is the complexity of our own psyche, a place where it is easy to get lost without a guide. And the hidden city, the shining Agartha at the heart of the world, is the integrated self, the state of wholeness and enlightenment that is the ultimate goal of many spiritual traditions. This does not mean that the tunnels are not real. The psychological and the physical are not mutually exclusive. They are often reflections of each other. The principle of as above, so below, can also be interpreted as within, so without. A civilization that has mastered its inner world would naturally create a physical world that reflects that harmony. Their subterranean cities would be an external manifestation of their own internal balance. This interpretation gives new meaning to the idea that the key to the entrance is a state of being. To enter the inner earth, one must first have successfully navigated their own inner world. The purity of heart and clarity of mind, required by the legends, are the psychological passports needed to pass the guardians. You cannot enter a realm of harmony if you bring a mind full of inner conflict. The barrier would reject you, not out of malice, but out of a simple incompatibility of frequency. This idea is found in many mystical traditions. The alchemical quest for the philosopher's stone was not just about transmuting lead into gold, but about the transmutation of the alchemist's own soul. The shamanic journey to the lower world is not a trip to a physical place, but a deep dive into the subconscious to retrieve lost knowledge or healing power. The Agartha narrative can be seen as the grandest expression of this archetypal journey. The cataclysm that drove the precursor civilization underground is the personal trauma, or dark night of the soul, that forces an individual to abandon their surface-level identity and journey inward. The long period of development in the hidden world is the process of introspection, healing, and the integration of the fragmented parts of the psyche. The eventual emergence of the subterranean masters is the return of the enlightened individual to the surface world, bringing back wisdom and healing for the collective. This psychological lens does not invalidate the search for a physical network. It enriches it. It suggests that the explorers and seekers who are so powerfully drawn to this mystery may be responding to an unconscious calling. They are searching for something outside of themselves that is also a reflection of a deep need within themselves, a need for wholeness, for meaning, and for a connection to a history far deeper and more profound than the one they have been taught. It also explains why the mystery has such an enduring, almost hypnotic power. It speaks to us in the language of dreams and archetypes, a language that the conscious mind may dismiss as fantasy, but that the subconscious mind recognizes as truth. The silent, waiting world beneath our feet is a perfect mirror for the silent, waiting potential within our own minds. The search for one is inextricably linked to the discovery of the other. And perhaps the ultimate revelation will be that the final gateway to Agartha is not found in a remote mountain or a classified military base, but is discovered in the stillness of one's own centered consciousness. As we trace the myriad purposes attributed to the global tunnel network, refuge, transportation, energy grid, we arrive at the most profound and forward-looking possibility of all. What if the primary function of this immense undertaking was not just to save a civilization, but to save life itself? This is the theory of the network as a genetic arc, a planetary-scale project designed to preserve the biological and informational blueprint of all life on Earth through the great, recurring cycles of cosmic and geological extinction. Any civilization advanced enough to foresee a global cataclysm would understand that the survival of their own species is meaningless without the survival of the ecosystem upon which they depend. Saving a few thousand humans is a hollow victory if the world they emerge into is a sterile, poisoned rock. The true task of survival would be to preserve the entire web of life. In this model, the subterranean world was designed as a series of interconnected, self-sustaining biodomes. The cities would be the hubs, but the vast stretches of tunnel between them would be lined with immense hydroponic and aeroponic farms, vast arboretums, and ecological preserves. Here, under the stable glow of an artificial light source tuned to the specific needs of different plants, they would have cultivated not just staple crops for their own survival, but a complete library of the planet's flora. They would have preserved the seeds and genetic material of every useful and endangered plant, from the tallest trees to the most delicate medicinal herbs. The same principle would apply to fauna. The legends of animals being taken underground are not just charming additions to the story. They are a logical necessity for any serious survival plan. The network would have to contain vast, climate-controlled habitats for a breeding population of the world's key animal species. This would be a genetic zoo of unimaginable scale and complexity. They would need to preserve not just the large, charismatic animals, but the insects for pollination, the microorganisms for soil health, and the entire complex food chain that makes a biosphere viable. The precursor civilization would have been master geneticists, their knowledge of DNA far surpassing our own. They would have created a library of life, storing the complete genetic code of every species on the planet. This would allow them to reintroduce species that were lost in the cataclysm through cloning or advanced genetic engineering once the surface world became habitable again. This theory provides a stunning new context for many ancient myths. The story of Noah's Ark is the most obvious parallel, a simplified, mythologized memory of a highly sophisticated technological operation to preserve global biodiversity. The tree of life archetype, found in cultures worldwide, could be a memory of the great subterranean arboretums, the central source from which all surface life was reseeded. The serpentine gods, the Nagas, so often associated with the underworld, could be a symbol of DNA itself, the double helix of life, whose secrets were guarded by the subterranean civilization. But the Ark would need to preserve more than just biological life. It would need to preserve knowledge. The Hall of Records and the metal libraries are the informational component of the Ark. They would contain the complete scientific, historical, artistic, and philosophical legacy of the precursor world. This knowledge would be the software to the biological hardware, the instruction manual for rebuilding civilization. The inhabitants of this world, the Agarthans, would see themselves not as rulers or survivors, but as librarians, gardeners, and zookeepers on a planetary scale. They would be the custodians of terrestrial life, their entire society organized around this sacred, multi-generational duty. Their long period of isolation would be a period of intense, focused work, maintaining the ecosystems, curating the genetic library, and preserving the knowledge base. This theory of the genetic arc is perhaps the most hopeful and awe-inspiring of all. It suggests that the recurring extinctions that mark our planet's geological history may not have been complete endings. It hints that life on Earth has a hidden continuity, a built-in resilience, managed and protected by a lineage of intelligent stewards. It reframes our own existence. We are not a biological accident on a random planet. We are part of an ancient, precious, and carefully preserved garden. And it implies that the greatest treasure to be found in the inner world is not gold or advanced technology, but the living blueprint of our own world, the complete and unbroken story of life on Earth. The question that remains is whether we, the current chaotic gardeners on the surface, will prove ourselves worthy of ever being shown the full library. As we draw the threads of our investigation together, a single, breathtaking tapestry begins to take shape. It is a story woven from the most disparate materials, the dreams of ancient mystics and the seismic data of modern geologists, the hushed folklore of indigenous tribes and the classified documents of military powers, the impossible precision of megalithic stone and the ephemeral shimmer of an out-of-place artifact. Taken individually, each thread can be plucked, questioned, and perhaps dismissed. But when viewed as a whole, the image they form is coherent, persistent, and possessed of a profound, internal logic. Let us re-examine the central pillars of this grand narrative. First, there is the universal mythos. From every inhabited continent, our ancestors have told us stories of a complex, intelligent world beneath our feet, a place of refuge and power, accessed through guarded gateways. This is not a scattered collection of similar tales, but a single, global story refracted through a multitude of cultural prisms. Second, we have the physical evidence on the surface. We have the colossal, unexplained underground cities of Cappadocia, proving that large-scale, subterranean life was not just possible, but was a reality for thousands. We have the enigmatic tunnels of the Andes, the persistent rumors of voids beneath Giza, and the tantalizing hints of artificial structures deep within the Amazon and under the Antarctic ice. We have the megalithic sites, aligned with impossible precision to both the stars above and to a hidden geometry of energy lines across the earth below. Third, there is the evidence of lost knowledge. We have the ancient maps that chart a world that should not have been known to their creators. We have the artifacts of impossible technology, the vitrified walls, the perfectly machined stones. And we have the linguistic fossils, the shared root words and archetypes that hint at a common, forgotten origin for our most fundamental stories. Fourth, we are confronted by the pattern of modern concealment. We have the accounts of miners and drillers who break through into another world, only to be silenced. We have the scientific anomalies that are explained away or ignored. We have the military expeditions to the most sensitive locations, shrouded in secrecy. We have the enduring accounts of men like Fawcett and Byrd, rational explorers who were consumed by a mystery that official history refuses to acknowledge. When these four pillars, myth, physical evidence, lost knowledge, and modern concealment, are assembled, they provide the foundation for a radical, yet coherent, new history of our planet. It is the story of a highly advanced precursor civilization, perhaps the Atlanteans or Lemurians of legend, who understood the great cycles of planetary cataclysm. In response, they constructed a global subterranean network, a combination of ark, library, and energy grid, designed to preserve the seed of life and knowledge through the coming disaster. They migrated into this inner world, leaving the surface to its fate. The survivors of the cataclysm on the surface, thrown back to a primitive state, became the ancestors of our own civilization. Their faint, fragmented memories of the precursor world became the basis for their creation myths, their stories of gods, and their legends of a lost golden age. The hidden civilization, the Agarthans, became the guardians of the planet, watching, waiting, and perhaps subtly guiding our slow, painful redevelopment. They maintain their secrecy out of a profound and justifiable caution, knowing that our volatile, warlike nature is not yet ready for the knowledge and power they possess. Their world is protected by a multi-layered system of natural barriers, technological defenses, and human agents, a system designed to filter out all but the most worthy and prepared seekers. Their entrances are keyed not to force, but to frequency, to a harmony of consciousness that is the antithesis of our own fragmented world. This grand narrative answers more questions than it raises. It explains the cyclical nature of civilization, the sudden leaps in our technological and cultural development, the impossible achievements of our ancestors, and the deep archetypal power of our most enduring myths. It unites the scientific and the spiritual, suggesting that they are two languages describing the same underlying reality. It presents a vision of the Earth as a living, conscious system, and of ourselves as a small, troubled, but perhaps not entirely forgotten part of that system. It is a story that humbles us, reminding us that we may not be the first or the most advanced civilization to call this planet home, and it is a story that inspires us, offering the breathtaking possibility that the solutions to our most intractable problems, war, pollution, scarcity, may have already been solved, and that the blueprint for a sustainable, harmonious world is waiting for us in the silent, patient, and profound darkness beneath our feet. So, we find ourselves at the end of our journey, standing at the threshold of a mystery as vast as the world itself. We have followed the whispers down through the layers of time, through the labyrinth of myth, and into the speculative darkness of the deep earth. And here, at the precipice of this immense possibility, the final question turns from the world below back to ourselves. As you sit here now, feeling the familiar pull of gravity, listening to the sounds of the surface world, consider for a moment that this reality, this solid, known world, might be a thin and fragile crust over a secret that would change everything. The ground you believe to be a foundation may be a ceiling, the sky not the only source of light, and our history not the only story. The proposition of a global subterranean civilization is not merely a test of our belief, but a test of our imagination. Can we conceive of a history that does not place us at its pinnacle? Can we imagine a form of intelligence that measures progress not by conquest, but by continuity? Can we accept the possibility that we are not the masters of this planet, but perhaps its most troubled and volatile children, living under the patient, watchful gaze of an older, wiser branch of the family? The evidence, as we have seen, is circumstantial, yet its pattern is as intricate and persistent as a fractal. The myths of our ancestors, the anomalies of our science, the secrets of our governments, they all point in the same direction, downward, into the quiet, waiting heart of the world. To dismiss it all as fantasy is the easy path. It is the path of comfort, the one that allows our familiar worldview to remain intact. But the harder path, the path of the true seeker, is to hold the question open. It is to walk through the world with a new awareness, to see a strange rock formation and wonder if it conceals a door, to hear an unexplained hum and wonder if it is the echo of a forgotten technology, to read an ancient myth and wonder if it is not a story, but a set of instructions. Perhaps the ultimate purpose of this great legend is not that we should find the physical entrance to Agartha. Perhaps its purpose is to create in us the qualities that would make us worthy of an invitation. To solve the riddle of the tunnels, we may first have to solve the riddle of ourselves. We may have to build a civilization on the surface that is so harmonious, so sustainable, and so wise that it finally resonates with the one that waits below. The search, therefore, becomes the key. The journey itself is the initiation, and the final revelation may not be the discovery of a city of gold, but the transformation of our own world into a place that the guardians would no longer need to protect us from. Remember this the next time you feel the solid ground beneath your feet. It is not as solid as it seems. It holds the memory of cataclysms and the promise of renewal. It is the floor of our world, but it may be the ceiling of another. And somewhere, in the immense and silent darkness below, in chambers lit by a light we have never seen, a possibility waits that could not just rewrite our past, but could offer us a new and unimagined future. The question is, and has always been, are we ready to listen?